What's up, guys? Welcome back to Right Side. Today, I want to bring Billy back on the channel to talk about the results of the election now that the dust has settled and go through an election autopsy. With that said, let's get into the video. All right, Billy, welcome back to the channel. It was quite some time since the last time, and of course, the election has come and gone, and the dust has pretty much settled. Um, from your perspective, what were some of the key takeaways that you got from this election?
Well, I think the biggest key takeaway is that this election was simply a referendum. Um, this was an election where you had basically two incumbents who we know, we've been able to see how both of them
Yep.
would be when their party is running the White House.
Mm-hmm.
And overwhelmingly, they said they wanted Trump back. And that was a referendum on Biden and Harris. And that's really, you see the entire country move redward. That's why. It's because they didn't like the job that they did. And it's as simple as that. And you would say, why? What was the issue? Well, the number one issue this election overwhelmingly was the economy. There's the famous saying, it's the economy, stupid. And that
Good
is
old
what
James Carville.
that's what explains this entire election cycle. Everything just came down to the economy. When you look at the exit polls, they show
Mm-hmm.
that 70% of people felt that the economy was in bad shape and they overwhelmingly supported Trump. And the 30% of people who supported Harris thought the economy was doing well, but they were well in the minority. And what you saw was a shift across the board for nearly every socioeconomic
Mm-hmm.
race thing you could think of as a result. And when you look at how the campaigns were ran, um, $1.5 billion in 2 months spent by the
Yeah.
Harris campaign that
To the
gave a
thankful.
message that completely did not resonate with the American people. When you look at
Mm-hmm.
when polling showed the two biggest issues were the economy and the border,
Yep.
and Trump was winning on the economy and the border. And really, the Harris campaign ran their biggest messaging around
Abortion.
abortion and threats to democracy, as I would project 2025. But
Yep.
the problem is when the Trump campaign is running on the number one and number two, and the
Yep.
Harris campaign is running on the number three and the number four issue, who's going to win? The number one and the number two. It's as
Exactly.
simple as that. It's not. You try and break this down and you try and look for what was the secret sauce. There was no secret sauce. It's very straightforward. Um, Harris, I mean, you shouldn't run a presidential election in only 2 months. It's not a winning strategy, and
Not
it's
recommended.
um, at Harris, she didn't resonate with people. She didn't
Right.
interview until the
Mhm.
final week. Well, guess what? Most people have already voted by the final week, or have made up their minds. It is extremely, extremely hard to get someone's vote in the final weeks. At
That's
that
right.
point, convincing happens in September and mid October. Mid
Yep.
October to the first week of November is mobilizing the people that you've convinced.
Especially since we had such I mean, we saw great early voting turnout in the early voting, especially for Republicans. And so when it comes to kind of kind of game planning on winning over people at the last second, that's very risky thing to do.
Yeah, well, it's just not smart. Trump did a lot in the media. He went on a
Yes.
lot of podcasts. Did
Yep.
a lot of it probably helped him. Would he have won even if he didn't do that? Yes,
Yeah.
but it certainly helped him probably with siphoning a couple thousand votes here, a couple thousand there. Helps him with his popular vote margin, so he has that mandate he claims um,
A
they're
feather in his cap.
still working with. Um, but really, this election was a referendum, and it showed that people thought the 4 years under Trump were better than the 4 years under Biden in terms of leadership. And I can't say I would disagree with that, regardless of how you feel politically.
Yeah, when I look back into this election, hindsight's 2020, of course. I can't help but feel like this election was a story of two segments of the population having two completely different ideas of reality. Where one group is saying that, we're struggling to make ends meet. We're living paycheck to paycheck. Groceries are up. Rent is up. I mean, we've heard the lines before. And the other side is campaigning on things that are external, like are external to the everyday things that people are dealing with. They're running on Ukraine. They're running on abortion. They're running on threats to democracy. Uh, and this idea that the economy is not that bad, and even if it was, it really doesn't matter. Versus, you've been left behind. The debt is unbelievable. How much debt they're racking up. Uh, the inflation is killing everyone. And so it really kind of, for me, came down to the fact that, do you think that people would go into that ballot box, the voting booth, and, think to yourself, like, you know what? Everything's up. I can't really afford my mortgage. I'm really scraping up things for groceries, but man, I mean, abortion's on the ballot, and I gotta vote for Kamala.
Well, the Trump attack ads were very damning on Kamala
Yes.
Harris. They were very well produced, and I think they did make a big difference. I think the advertising team of the Trump campaign did a great job with the attack ads, and they really made people think, were they better off 4 years ago than they were
Yes.
today, which is a big selling point and what probably ultimately won
Hmm.
Trump this election.
I mean, there was that one ad that the from the Trump campaign of Kamala is for they, them, and Donald Trump is for you. That has pretty much been widely accepted as the most influential advertisement of this election, which just speaks to the fact that Kamala Harris really had a hard time not running as what she was, which is a far left California liberal. Uh, she was on the record, supporting sex change operations for illegals, sex change operations for minors, all these radically left policies that she
I,
tried to kind of distance herself from, and
I
Trump
don't
kind of
even,
nailed it to the wall on it.
I don't even really think that made a difference. I really don't. I think the Kamala for they them. I don't think I don't think it made a difference. I think at the end of the day, it's really, you could say, you can point to this, you can point to that, you can point to, they them us. You could point to the transgender surgeries. At the end of the day, I don't think it made a difference, because at the end of the day, all Trump won on was simply how Americans felt about the economy and how people felt, how much was in their wallets. And I don't think that whether those ads were run or whether he attacked on them or not, it would have still came back to, it's the economy and it's how people feel, um, how much money is in their wallets, or how safe they are. Because people don't want, um, people could, coming over the border at record numbers and potentially coming into their communities.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, at the end of the day, it's not even worth even going into that deep, because it's such a surface level issue. It's the economy.
So in this election, we saw a lot of trends and shifts across multiple demographics, and I know that you have a few of those ready to kind of look over. Um, we saw a big shift among Latino voters. We saw a shift among Black men. And we saw a large kind of disconnect between how voters viewed the state of the country in terms of economics, things like that, and some shifts among religious groups. Interestingly enough, and so if you have those, I'd love to kind of go over those.
Well, Catholics have historically voted, uh, Democrat. Um, yep, and they voted for Biden by 5%. This election, they voted overwhelmingly for Trump by a 20% margin. Obviously, Trump won Hispanic men, and he won them by a pretty good margin.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he did better with younger voters. Uh, I mean, he did better across the board. I mean, the trend. If you want to look at what the trend was across the board, nearly by every group. They were fed up with the Biden Harris administration. I mean, um, the numbers when you even, I mean, 18 to 24, Trump only lost them by 11, while previously he lost them by nearly 25%, or probably more, close to 30 off the top of my head. Um, you know, it I men he did extremely well with.
Mm-hmm.
He mobilized young men, which certainly helped to offset the heavily Democrat young
Young
women,
women.
who, young women voted about 23% for uh, for Harris. So having the young men, even if he only won it narrowly, kind of offset some of that to 18 to 30,
Mm-hmm.
and it allows the older groups, which overwhelmingly vote Republican.
Right.
It very much dilutes the main area in which Harris needed to win this election.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and even then, women, Kamala Harris needed young people, women, and minorities. um, White women voted for Trump again. Um, and he won them by a couple points. Young people, Trump made big strides with, and minorities, Trump won Hispanic men by he got 54% of Hispanic men.
That's
If you want to
crazy.
know, if you want to know why he won Nevada, a state with only has 40% white people, well, he won it by what, like 3% because of what happened with Hispanic men.
Mm-hmm.
And and Catholics as well. I mean, the Catholic vote certainly certainly made it different. A lot of the Catholic vote has helped the Democrats for a very long time. The Catholic vote probably made a significant um, gain for Biden winning in 2020. So to lose them so overwhelmingly, and
Yeah.
the Democrats may never get them back at this rate that they're going. Um, so, is there anything more specific you would like to look at, or?
No, I just we saw a lot of to me what were shocking results. You saw a initially tight race in a state like Virginia. New Jersey was called very early, but overnight tightened to a remarkably single digit race, which a lot of people weren't expecting. And I'm kind of wondering why you think I mean Illinois for a long time was a single digit race. New Mexico was within, a play in territory. Minnesota, New Hampshire. And so a lot of these states were closer, kind of, in a relative sense. And so I'm kind of interested to know what you think happened there.
Well, I mean, these were safe Democrat states, so
Right.
Democrats really didn't put much effort into, holding them. But obviously, you look at how far Jersey went, and you say, "Wow, that's pretty good." I mean, had the Harris campaign put any, resources into Jersey, I'm sure the result would have been much different. But the popular vote being tied in polling was a pretty good indication that stuff like that was going to happen,
Mm,
because the popular vote isn't just the battleground states. The popular
right.
vote shows the trends of the
It's
entire country.
everyone. That's right.
So by showing that it was about tied, or he was up about one, or she, that pretty much showed that you were going to see in states like California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, where there's a lot of people,
Yep.
there was going to be rightward trends.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and even Texas and Florida, they went
Yep.
very far right. Texas, when it seems like they've maxed out the rurals, they they say
Yeah.
no, we got to keep going. Um,
Yeah, Texas, I think, I don't know if it's official yet, but I think Texas went further towards Trump than New York did for Harris. If it's at least very close.
I'm not 100% sure on that, but Texas is a border state. They are like the ground one border state.
Yeah.
They deal with the most BS.
Yep.
And if you really want an indication on how Americans felt about the handling of the border, the biggest spikes of more
Shifts. Yep.
Republican shift happened at the border,
Yep.
and they weren't small ones, they were big ones. I mean, in fact, like Uvalde County, which had the
The
school shooting,
shooting. Yep.
13% more Republican, because it's by the border.
Mm-hmm.
Or Cameron County, which is the closest county to the border itself, um, or farthest south in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
19% more Republican. 19 is incredible, because this is a county that Biden won easily, and it falls 19 points to the right, and
That's
Trump
right.
flipped. And that's not even the biggest one.
Oh yeah, I think it was. I think Maverick County was at 28 points last time I checked on it. I'm not sure what it is now, but I remember checking it a week or two after the election. I think Maverick County was at astounding 28-point shift, and it's a wild shift to see in a single cycle, considering that I think Trump only won Texas by 5 or 6 points in 2020, and now uh, Texas is right where it should be, to the right of Florida. When we can talk to Florida a little bit later, but Texas is back to its 13 point Republican wins that I think we all kind of grew accustomed towards.
Well, so much for blue Texas.
But they really did work hard at it for cycles and cycles. The Democrats really put a lot of investment into Texas to kind of hopefully shift it blue one day, and in a single election cycle, you screw up an issue like immigration and the border so badly that all that work you put into for years and years and years goes out the window in one night.
Yeah, that's well, it's a major issue when your state is being invaded. Um, every southern state, well, every state in general, what it did, but I mean, voters are fed up. Arizona too. The border counties at Arizona
Mm-hmm.
swung hard to the right too. Yuma County, big one, not enough to win Kerry Lake her Senate race, but I don't know if there was any amount of border invasion that could have won it for her. That's besides the point.
Um, I guess we can finally go to the Florida. Not that Florida is a very interesting state, but Florida, which I mean, if you told my parents 20 years ago that Florida would be a Republican stronghold, the likes of Texas, they'd laugh in your face, and they wouldn't give you the time of day for any other opinions. But Florida voted to the left of Texas by by like a point, if that. I mean, Florida is blood red now.
Yeah, and that's not surprising. That was at least I fully expected that. And it just goes to show um, how good state party leadership
Ron
can
DeSantis.
translate
Yep.
into wins across the entire state.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Ron DeSantis wins Florida by about
20.
15,000,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
15,000 votes in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And he wins it by the largest margin in Florida history in 2022. And now Trump goes on to win it by about 13 points.
Yep.
So, it shows, Floridians appreciated the leadership. And I think a lot of it happened during COVID as well.
Yes. Yep.
Ron
Yep.
DeSantis. And I think Ron DeSantis showed that strong conservative leadership can change the entire dynamics of a state. And it made it a state that people wanted to move to.
Mm-hmm.
Even, you had people, even Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan was flying down to Florida during COVID. I mean, he made
Everyone was.
come to during COVID because it was the state where they had
They're the
no
freest. Yep.
lockdowns. Uh, and I think Ron DeSantis' leadership should be studied for what he was able to do to Florida, and I think Greg Abbott's been a great governor too in Texas. Uh, Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
we need to get Arizona back,
Yep.
but Joe Lombardo's been doing a great job in Nevada. He won in 22, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he's helped build up the state party. And when you build up a state party, the results can change on the election levels.
Yeah, and I think that another state, perhaps the last one that we'll kind of fawn over for a little bit, that's gone further to the right with every election cycle, seemingly, is Ohio. Ohio and Florida. It's crazy to think that they were once bellwether states, true swing states in every sense of the word.
Yeah,
Uh,
you
with
can
it,
say Ohio was the penultimate and
yep.
Florida was the ultimate. And now you say that's probably PA and Wisconsin.
Hmm. But to see Ohio and Florida shift so hard in such a relatively short amount of time is quite remarkable, at least to me.
Yeah, well, the working class is leaving the Democrat Party. The Rust Belt. I mean, and you see similar things out of Ohio. Don't forget about Iowa.
Oh, the Seltzer poll.
Well, the Seltzer poll is one thing, but Iowa voted for Barack Obama heavily. I mean, it's we shouldn't insult Iowa by not giving them credit to how much of a swing
Mhm.
state they were and how they're farther to the right than Ohio now. Um, and I believe all four of their congressional districts are held by Republicans, which Seltzer has retired now.
And for good reason. One state that every single election cycle, I kind of peek in on that kind of makes me kind of a little curious as to know what's really happening in the state is Kansas. Kansas has had some pretty interesting kind of shifts. We saw a relatively large leftward shift relative to the nation in Utah, some in Kansas. Obviously, these aren't swing states within any reasonable amount of time, but it's enough to kind of at least make my make my ears peek up a little bit. Do you think anything's there, or do you think that that's just
I mean,
running up the score?
northeastern Kansas is moving very far left, and in a similar way to where like the Georgia suburbs have moved left.
Mm.
The Kansas suburbs of
Okay.
Topeka, is that what it's called? Like off the top of my head, I can't remember, but Douglas and Johnson County, they're going to continue to move leftwards, but most of the state is rural. I mean,
Right.
will they be the biggest? Yes, but most of the state is rural. So no matter how much it trends left,
Mm-hmm.
as long as the rurals don't, as long as we don't start collapsing in the rurals, Republicans should be fine in Kansas. I reject the notion that Kansas would be a blue state in 20 years. I don't think they're going to grow that much. But anything's possible. But
Mm-hmm.
Utah, I think Utah might is probably too religious
Yes. Yeah.
for
Yeah.
Democrats to ever win it. But I mean, Salt Lake City is trending blue. But again, the state is so Republican that no matter how far left it trends, it's going to be hard for the Democrats to even uh make it competitive
Mm-hmm.
because the rural Utah will always vote Republican, and Salt Lake is not going to make up enough, and it's very religious state. Mormons vote Republican. It's,
Yeah, and speaking of, swing state in 20 years and kind of looking into the future, from what the lessons we've kind of learned and the trends that we've seen in this election, what do you kind of see forecasting into the future with the crystal ball here? What are some perhaps future swing states looking like? Some trends to see if they continue, some flukes. What can we kind of expect going forward?
well, I think in 2028 you're going to see the same seven states,
Okay.
and this is what happens a lot. Very rarely does that move. Sometimes you'll see one pop in or one pop out. Virginia was a swing state for a while, popped out. New Hampshire, sometimes it pops in, sometimes it pops out. It doesn't play a huge difference because of its
Right.
small electorals. Um, Georgia, I mean, you're probably going to see that there's a good chance that soon Georgia and Pennsylvania will be the two um, key battleground states out of the like the Ohio and the Florida could become the Pennsylvania and the
Okay.
Georgia's you know Arizona went back to the 5 point win
Mm-hmm.
that Trump had in 2016.
Right.
Georgia didn't. I think Arizona was a fluke in 2020. That was really just that was indicative of COVID, not
A
any
one off, yeah.
actual electoral trends. However, Georgia is not the case. I think that Georgia actually has is moving, trending leftward, and probably will get to the point where I mean it's still tilting a Republican state like North Carolina, um, but it's getting to the point where it's going to move to like a Pennsylvania toss up, or
Okay.
even lean Democrat. Obviously, we'll have to see what future Hispanic trends show to know what's happening out of Nevada. Um, people say that Pennsylvania will be the next Ohio. I'm not really sure about that because there's two big cities and a lot of suburbs, um, which, like when you look at Kansas, there's so much more rural, which, Pennsylvania, no, it's Alabama in between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Um,
Oh, okay.
and really, uh, you know, if you want to win, you you know, Trump. I think Philadelphia has gotten more far right um, every election of 2016, 2020, 2024, which is good for Republicans. Um, Erie County has moved to the right. You know, continue to do well there. I can, I can't ever see like a Republican plus 10 map out of Pennsylvania like I can
Okay.
of Ohio, but
Okay.
it certainly can be a state that Republicans can hold in the future if they do good in, in the Northeast, maintain the rurals, and don't get killed out of Philadelphia and the Philly suburbs. Because, the reason that Pennsylvania isn't going to be the next Ohio is really Chester County and Montgomery County in Philadelphia. But you know, uh, in the next census after reapportionment, uh, there's a very good chance that no Rust Belt state would even be needed to win the election like this one. There's a very good possibility that um, Arizona and Georgia would be enough to hit 270,
Yep.
and
So
North Carolina, of course.
so we're looking at the 2024 map and trying to forecast it onto 2028 and even 2032. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
2032, you can't forecast because reapportionment will happen. So the
Uh,
map is different.
is there anything that kind of comes to mind regarding states that you think that Democrats would be smart to either kind of reinforce in or try to branch out into? Uh, and same thing for Republicans.
Well, I think Democrats would be wise to probably grab a Josh Shapiro or a Gretchen Whitmer. Um, to they have to win the Rust Belt. That's number one in 2028. Uh, but overall, your map's going to be about the same. So this is the big question will be how the Republican nominee will likely be JD Vance.
Right.
I don't think anyone's going to argue that. So the biggest question is going to be how did um,
Trump
how did
do.
Trump perform? This a lot of it will be a referendum on JD Vance. They
Mm-hmm.
did decent. He could very well win.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm sure he'll do a lot of what Trump did. He'll run with Trump. But in 2 years, the mid what happens in the midterm elections will give us a pretty good idea of what will happen
Mm-hmm.
in the presidential elections. We'll see his popularity. Obviously, he's more popular than ever now, but he hasn't started yet.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how the economy's doing in 2 years. You know, but you know, Joe Biden's unpopularness rubbed off on Kamala Harris.
Yes.
Donald Trump's unpopular. If Donald Trump becomes unpopular, it'll rub off on JD Vance. So we'll see, but um, he can certainly do it. There's a lot in it for JD Vance if he wants to be the next president. He's got to show that
He's got to
the
show he could. Yeah.
leadership, and certainly a great way to show it would be after 4 years of the unpopularity of Harris coming out swinging, looking
Mm-hmm.
favorable. But Democrats, they need someone. They need a Rust. I think they need their best candidate would be Shapiro.
Mm-hmm.
They need someone who can sweep the Rust Belt. Because
All
if
right.
they sweep the Rust Belt, they win the election.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so Shapiro or Whitmer, I think, have to be either of the candidates. If you go to California and grab Gavin Newsom, or run Harris again or run Hillary Clinton, where's the Rust Belt appeal?
Yeah.
Where's the working class
Yeah.
appeal? Democrat have party has moved away from the working class. That's one of the biggest trends that we've seen. People, I mean, it's really true now that the Republican Party has become the party of the working class.
Hmm. And so, before we kind of wrap things up, as always, is there's anything that you think that you'd want the viewers to kind of maybe be aware of going forward to keep an eye out for? Obviously, we covered a lot of ground in this video regarding 2024 and what could happen in 2028. A lot of trends, a lot of shifts, a lot of more of the same, while some places are drastically different. Um, are there any final things that you would say that you think that the viewers should kind of keep in mind going forward?
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest ones is just, it's time to start looking at 2026. The early bird gets the worm. There'll be a lot of competitive seats in 2026, and we need to take what we know now and start preparing for 2026. There's
Hmm.
pickup opportunities for both Republicans and Democrats in the Senate. Democrats will likely flip the House just because it'll be a Trump midterm year. Um, but the three key seats will be the Georgia Senate seat, the North Carolina Senate seat, and the Maine Senate seat. But regardless, Republicans should hold the Senate coming out of 2026.
Hmm.
And then one of the bigger trends that a lot went right for the GOP this election cycle, but there was one trend that went very wrong for them, and that was the Senate roll off trend,
Mm.
um, where in Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and Arizona, where Trump won, the Senate candidates lost. They did not ride the
Right.
coattails, they lost. Dave McCormick was the only one who won out of Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
And what we saw was a big Senate roll off where the number of people who voted, the number of votes for the Libertarian presidential was doubled in the Senate race. There was there was only 30,000 Libertarians voting in the presidential race. 100,000 people voted for the Senate Libertarian candidate, and it caused uh, the Senate Republicans like Mike Rogers and Eric Hovde to narrowly lose, or Sam Brown. He received 74,000 less votes
Right.
than Donald Trump did, but the Democrat received only 4,000 less than Kamala Harris did, which showed that down the ballot the votes split, but
Right.
they didn't split for the Democrat because they were popular. They split third party and dragged down the 2024 candidates. So Republicans need to do a better job of making sure if you vote for Trump, you're voting Republican for the Senate, because it happened straight down the board, and it's not wasn't indicative of any popularity of the Democrat candidate. It was really just people not voting for the Republican Senate candidate, and that needs to be figured out why, because that was a trend across the board. Even with Dave McCormick, who won, he faced that roll off. He just was still able to narrowly win by only about 15,000 votes. So it
Right.
really could have went either way. And then poor Mike Rogers out of Michigan lost by about 15, 20,000 votes with heavy roll off. So it's an issue that Republicans need to figure out, because you can win, across the board on the presidential level, but really you want to be winning across the board on every level,
Hmm.
because you want to. People said they wanted President Trump's agenda, yet they're going to have their agenda decided by uh, heavily, the likes of Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins because they gave us a slim majority. So, we have to sell. People said they wanted Trump, but they didn't give him enough seats to have a mandate. Trump doesn't have a mandate because he didn't win enough seats in Congress. And that's what I always say. If Trump had if Trump had a mandate, he would be able to pass this legislation. And he's not going to be able to do it easy because it didn't happen down ballot. And that's an unfortunate thing because we didn't do a good enough time of explaining that in order for Trump to do anything, he
Mm-hmm.
needs to have them, or it's gonna be the Lisa Murkowski mandate on
Mm-hmm.
Trump, or the Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and Mitch McConnell mandate on Trump, and that was a big mistake because there's no reason that those Trump voters should not have voted Republican down the ticket, and they're going to have major consequences on the outcome of Trump's victory and his
Mm-hmm.
applying his mandate.
All right, Billy. I appreciate it. I appreciate your insights. Appreciate you spending the time to talk about this kind of stuff. I know you live, eat, breathe this kind of stuff, and it's always fun talking to you about it.
Thank you.
Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button. If it's important to help the channel grow, become a member, subscribe, and ring the bell to stay updated with all my uploads. Finally, whether you agree or disagree, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. I look forward to engaging with you guys in respectful and thoughtful discussions. With that said, I'll see you guys next video. See ya.